Okay, welcome everyone. We are having our day in the life of a penetration tester, so hopefully that's what you're here for. If that's not it, maybe stick around anyway. It could be fun. We've got Tennisha Martin, who not only founded but is the executive director of BlackGirlsHack. If you have not heard of it, please go visit the website. And not only is that like one job, but secondarily, she has expertise in information security project management and red teams and creates courses that you can actually go take and has been recognized by Microsoft's Legacy Project as an innovator in cybersecurity. So you have the correct person to be telling you about red teaming today. And for BlackGirlsHack, if you're interested in donating, they are a nonprofit. It's getting towards the end of the year. How do your taxes look? Maybe throw some money there. And it's helping get more people, specifically Black women, into the cybersecurity field of all ages. And so obviously all of our audience is interested in doing that. So y'all should be 100% aligned with their mission as well. So Tennisha, can you tell me what exactly is it to be a penetration tester? Like, obviously I'm not going and taking pens and doodling on notepads or anything.
No. A pen tester is somebody who basically is paid and has written permission to break into systems. So whenever you have an application, whether that's a web application or whether it's a mobile application, there are people who, before it gets to you, are checking to make sure that it's secure, that when you put in your information, that, nobody can steal that information and that you're not able to access anything that you shouldn't be able to access. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, what a penetration tester is. There are so many different sections of or subsectors within the penetration testing. I do mobile and network penetration testing and web application pen testing, but there is also mainframe testing. There are a lot of different ways of penetration testing, a lot of different types of penetration testing. And there are people like all over the world who do this. Some folks specifically for a specific company, and then you have consultants like me who are hired by all of the companies out there. So think about like your social media sites and all the websites that you go to. Before you get those, that has to go through a penetration test, especially if it's in the financial, banking sector or something like that. Before it goes to those people, to make sure that there are not a lot of vulnerabilities. And by a lot, I mean like there are sometimes like very small things that are able to get through, but for the most part, you don't want anything that's going to jeopardize. So whenever you hear about, there's a breach, usually that breach means that the bad guys got there before the good guys. As a penetration tester myself, I usually go in and I will, when I test it and I find that there's a way to break in, I will tell them like, hey, you have this vulnerability. This is how I was able to get in, and this is how you fix it. And they then have the responsibility to, fix it and then hopefully get it retested before they, give it to their end users. But that's basically what a penetration tester does.
Okay, so for those of you who maybe have heard of similar things like bug bounties and all, this is not the same because you're actually working with the development teams and the companies before, or hopefully before they've launched this out into production, to find those to prevent any of these breaches. Whereas the bug bounty programs, people are finding things after they've put something out there, which, then it's a race. Does the hacker find it first or does the bug bounty person find it first?
Yeah, but I think I probably should clarify. So like when you're talking about working with the developers, you're usually talking about a red team, which is somebody that is internal to the organization and does that penetration testing themselves before it goes out. I usually do it like, if you think about like sometimes they do alpha test or beta test basically before it actually goes out to the public, before it's actually released. So it's finished the QA, it's finished the, development process. I'll basically get it before it can be released because then that's, one of those final sign-offs. It's like I said,
right before.
Yeah. Yep. But hopefully before it gets to the real world. Like there have been cases, honestly, where I am testing against production, and for the most part, like I'd say probably 90% of the time, like they're giving me something in a test environment as opposed to a production environment. If it's an external penetration test, then they might give me a production environment, but for the most part, it's they're doing it before it gets out to the general public, because it could be disastrous if the bad guys get there first, because then you're like, on the news talking about how you're going to do better because, millions of records have been breached and took you forever to
now
figure it out.
everybody's going to be impersonating your customers because they have all of their private information.
Yes. Did you use that same password that you used from your, your banking website? Well, now I've got it, and, it's mine now. All your accounts are mine.
Don't reuse password. Use
Yes.
a password manager. All right. Well, thanks for the good overview there. I mean, it sounds like you could be interested in pretty much anything: mainframes, web apps, mobile apps. Okay, you described like what it is you do, but what do you do day to day? Like, what does it look like? Are you, got the hoodie and you're screaming, "I'm in," like every 5 minutes?
That's hilarious. I usually don't wear a hoodie because, like, I work from my home office, and like it's usually kind of like warm in here. So like, but those are the vibes. From week to week, for the most part, I never know where it is that I'm going to be, who it is that I'm going to be hacking in advance. There are people
and that's
who
because
literally,
you said you're a consultant, not
I'm a
working
consultant.
within. Yeah.
Right. So like if I worked for like a, StreamYard, for example, like I don't know if they have like a whole, team or anything like that. I just picked on them because I see that logo on my screen. But if I worked for StreamYard, then I would get in and I know every day that I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at, whatever it is that they're putting out next. Right. Or if I worked for MySpace. I don't know if MySpace is still around, but I figured that it would be safe.
I think that they are.
Are they? Like, so if you work for those companies as like a red teamer or as a penetration tester, every day you're going to be looking at that application, and it might be that they're coming out with a new functionality, or it might be that they've got some new app that they want to put out, or they've got like an affiliate or something like that. But as a consultant, basically, I come in and they'll say, hey, this is who you're working on. So we usually have a kickoff meeting. So the kickoff meeting is maybe like an hour long, and it'll be like, hey, this is what we want you to do. And this is what we care about. And we always ask them what it is that they care about, because, we could spend, literally an hour going down any number of rabbit holes. But, if that's not, their main focus of the penetration test, then it doesn't, necessarily make sense. So we want to make sure that we understand, like, what are the high risk areas? What is it that they're concerned about, so that we can make sure that that's kind of what we're looking for. For the most part, it's a black box test. So, black box means like, hey, I've got an IP address, maybe I've got a domain, and I really don't have anything in terms of like a network architecture or anything that describes like what their environment looks like. I'm approaching it like, hey, I'm a bad guy, and I've decided that I've wanted, at this point, I want to attack StreamYard or MySpace or whoever, and now I have to go and see what I can find out. Right. And generally, I think that if you were a bad guy, that you would have like a goal, like, hey, I want to maybe get some credit card numbers, or I want to get some, user records, or I want to find out who everybody's related to. You generally have a goal. And for me, I laughed when you said, hey, I'm in, now what? Because I promise, at least twice a day, as I'm practicing breaking into these systems, like once I get in there, it's like, well, what's the point, right? If you're doing like a try hack me or a hack the box, you're looking for, a user or a root flag, right?
And once you have that flag, you're done, right?
Yeah, right. And that's what you're looking for. But, if you are just breaking into someone's system, you're like, hey, I don't really necessarily know what it is that I'm looking for. So at that point, then you just have to kind of like start looking around. So, for me, once you get access to something that you shouldn't have access to, whether that be a functionality, I'll keep running, basically like a report of like, hey, these are the things that I'm seeing, and it's not enough to just, run, for example, like a vulnerability scanner and say, hey, these are the things popped up. It for like try hack me, hack the box, when you're doing it for fun, I'd say it's like, you don't need pics, but like, for my clients, it's like pics or it didn't happen. Not only do you need a picture, but I need to know how you got in there and why do I care, right? Because, sometimes the people who have requested the penetration tester are not technical people, right? So I'm like, hey, I was able to execute code on your, your server. And they're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Right. So you have to be able to explain, what it is that you found and why it is that they care. And, it's not always as simple as, hey, this is your credit card, like I have this information now and I'm going to go purchase something, it may be as simple as, hey, this is showing a whole lot of information that it shouldn't be showing. This is what I'm able to see, or this is what I'm able to do, that I shouldn't be able to access. And for the most part, because it's gone through the development process, it's gone through, the software development lifecycle, unit testing, and what is it called? The, maybe the internal red team testing, a lot of the little things are usually already done. So we don't get a lot of by the time it gets to me, like there's not a lot of informational things that are in there. It's usually like things that are either, very high or critical in terms of like, hey, why I wouldn't even think to look there type of thing. So basically they tell me like, hey, this week we're testing this, or this day or whatever it is. They tell me what their client is. We have a kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting, basically is the start of testing. We have our written authorization because as a pen tester, you want to make sure that you have your written authorization, because without it, then, you go to jail. And, they're not going to want to be like, well, hey, Bob from, the operations office told me to go ahead and do this. And like, do you have that in writing? No, we're going to jail. Right.
That sounds like social engineering right there. We tell everyone not to listen to things like that.
Absolutely. Like, oh my gosh, like the, what is it? Like our CEO was in a meeting and they had like this really important thing. And I got a text message that said that they needed me to go and get this file, but they didn't have their username and password and they wanted me to get it no matter what. And, so I went and got it and, and they're like, this isn't the CEO's number. This is some random person. Why would they contact you? So you have to have your written permission. And then after the kickoff meeting, I literally will sit there and I will hack away and try to figure out, like what I can get in. And then once I get in, it's like, look around and find out what's here and, whether or not there's anything that's interesting. But for me, it's like, we know certain statistics about, what the landscape looks like, out there as far as like, for the most part, you see Linux boxes, sometimes you see Windows boxes, but for the most part, we're breaking into corporate networks and corporate systems, right? As opposed to like, your home box, which is like maybe a Windows, right? Most of the consumer market for individuals, I think it's something like 60% is Windows boxes, right? But, at the corporate level, it's not so much that's the case. It's usually a Linux box, or it might be Windows. I've had some companies that also have, Mac, but like that is not my area of expertise. Like I literally have to Google how to do a screenshot every time I am on my a Mac, because like I am a PC woman, so, but yeah, I get I hack for the week or the day or whatever it is that they've, got me for. And then at the end of the week, I write up a report that says, hey, this is what I was able to do. This is what I see. This is how I recommend that you fix it. And I think that piece is a little bit different from what you expect if you do like try hack me and hack the box. Most of the time when you do those boxes, you're just like, hey, I broke in, I got the user flag, win, right? But, you don't have to, write up and say like, hey, this is what I found. And then also this is how you fix it, and I think that for me was probably one of the biggest shockers, moving from, like being largely self-taught into like actual penetration testing, because it's like they want you to write a report. And then they want that report to explain, what it is that you found, and then how do they fix it? What are recommendations? So, does this indicate, hey, a lot of these, Apple tools that you're using are out of date. That to me says that you don't have a very good, change management or a good patch management system in your system. Like I can kind of tell some of those things just based off of the fact that this is, 18 versions behind where it should be, or it hasn't been updated in the past 2 years, whatever the case may be. And those are some of the things that I'll see when I get into, a system. Like I'll be able to say, hey, why did Larry leave his password in this file? And call
the
it
text
Larry's
file on the desktop.
right. Larry's RSA key or whatever it is. It's like, what are you doing? So, again, we let it let them know. And then I think if we find anything that's like, major, especially if we're working against the production environment, we usually tell them more real time, because again, it's a race. I want to get there before the bad guys get there, and it's not a good look if the bad guys are able to get in and I'm not, which is why I think it's very important that you continue hacking all of the things, you continue practicing, because systems are different. Like for the most part, unless I have a repeat client, like somebody's network across different companies are never the same, and it's never as pretty and nice and set up as Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. Like
there's no
always
documentation sitting there.
Yeah, there's no documentation, and there's no like write-ups that are available online in case I get stuck, or it's like sometimes you can go and look and see like if there was a report that your company has done in the past, like because I think the average shelf life for penetration testing companies is like about 3 years. So more than likely, if your company's been around and worth a grain of salt, they've done a test or two before, so you can go back and see what their findings were on previous. But other than that, it's just kind of like go forth and conquer all the things and good luck.
So kind of putting this in context, because I think there were some terms in there that people potentially haven't heard before, is before things get to you, development teams possibly have worked with their red team. They've possibly run application security testing tools, like the tools that just scan for things. And you had mentioned like they probably picked off like the informational and low level things. Mm-hmm. And that's in reference to like CVEs. So for people who don't know, CVE is like a score that a vulnerability gets that determines, in a generic wishy-washy environment, how dangerous is this? Now, something that's a high by the CVE number may not be high for you because you may have mitigating circumstances or whatever. So it's kind of like you start with that and then you read the details and you judge it from there. But the teams have taken care of that. And then they contract with you and they give you written permission to go after a piece of their system, hopefully before it gets launched or right after it gets launched. You then have to like attack it and then take, it sounds like a ton of pictures and documentation so you can write up this report and go back to your contact who may not be the technical person and explain, here's what I found, here's the proof that I found it, and here's how I think you should fix it, or here's maybe what it's hinting to your thing of like, maybe you aren't, somebody's not monitoring for patching your systems necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and because like for the most part, like when you run a vulnerability scanner, it'll pick up things like, hey, your system is enforcing like TLS version 1.0, like, you should use something higher, or hey, you're using an outdated version of Python, you're on like version 2.5 or something, and like, they're in 3 point something now or 4 point something, right? Most of the time those types of tools will get we'll pick up those things, right? So, and you're not paying for somebody to just run a vulnerability scanner, right? You're paying
or if you are, you should pay somebody else like you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love free money. I love easy money. But for the most part, they need you to, once you see that, this is what's there, this is possibility there, then you have to try to exploit it. I always wondered, as I still consider myself very much so a baby hacker. I don't feel like I know all of the things at this point. But like, I wondered why we always saw, penetration testers that also are, exploit developers, or also, because, it's not, like I said, it's not enough that you just be able to break in. You then have to also try to, exploit whatever it is, so when, we get these vulnerabilities, and it's great if there's like, hey, this is how you can confirm it. But, I've, for the most part, don't use, what is the tool called, Metasploit, in real life, because sometimes you're not allowed to have that on their network, or sometimes the tools that you would typically use are not allowed, or that type of traffic is blocked, for example, by their firewall. So it really just comes down to hey, do you have the skills to be able to kind of pivot and react to what is needed, and then figure out so I literally stay on Google, I think probably half the day, trying to figure out like, hey, is there already something out there for there? Is this a tool that doesn't, do this the traditional way? Because like, kind of like, I think professional developers, you learn how to do the development, you learn how to do the skills, but then, you have to be able to apply it to very unique and specific situations. And it's not always going to be laid out absolutely perfectly, like, some of the cloud-based training platforms.
Now, you had mentioned that like you're constantly having to go after different systems because different clients give you different things. Would you say that you're also having to like just keep up with the latest technologies because somebody might chuck some new Kubernetes thing at you? Is that like also kind of a part of your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like I tell people all the time, like I'm like, I am not a cloud person. Like if someone like needs to know something about cloud-based something or another, like I will literally like send them to, some of my friends. Like I'll send them to Dominique, for example, Dominique Ward, for example. I'll be like, hey, you need to go talk to Dom. I don't know. But what I find is that, a lot of companies are just basically hosting through these cloud-based providers, these Linux systems or the Windows systems or whatever it is, so it's like, when you're seeing things, for example, you'll be like, hey, I'm being blocked by something. Oh, this is, is hosted in the cloud, or it's, so it's like, as much as I would like to be like, hey, I don't know anything about the cloud, who, that sucks, depending on what it is you're doing, especially if you're doing external or internal network penetration, you kind of have to know what it is that you're looking for. So like I find that like I have to, learn new things at least to be able to know what I'm looking for. Like, oh, this is like a JSON token, or hey, oh, this is, so that you can be able to at least be able to have a conversation about what it is that you're seeing and whether or not it's expected or not. Like no one expects as a penetration tester for you to be a master of all things. But you do have to, have a good foundation, I think. Excuse me, completely random. But I actually met a guy yesterday that was, I think his title was like distinguished hacker. And I was like, what in the world is that? And then I was like, is that what's like the level after that? And he was like, oh, this is the highest level that you can get, doing, basically pen testing, hacking consulting for through delivery. This is the highest level. And I'm like, is that like God tier hacking? And and I was like, please know that when I hit God tier level of hacking, like people are not going to be able to have conversations with me anymore. I'm going to be like, why are you talking to me, you mere mortal? Like what's the Anna Delvey, like going around saying like, what are you, poor? Like this is how I'm going to react when I get to like God tier hacking, when I feel like I know all the things, but I don't even know that it's possible. And I asked him, I was like, do you know like everything? And he was like, no, I've been around the block a couple of times, which is like, very humble brag for like, I know a lot of things, but like, please know that when I get
Every
to God
day
tier,
some developer invents something new. It's this,
absolutely,
the denominator keeps increasing.
Yeah, and it's so crazy because like, whereas we could see, very common like web application servers that were made in certain technologies before, then like it'll be like, oh, well, we don't do that anymore. Like that's bad form. But then like you'll still, they'll be like, hey, Tennisha, we've got a mainframe thing. And I'm like, or like, hey, we've got a site that's in like, Ruby or some, COBOL or something. And
well,
I'm
this
like,
is why all the hackers hang out together, because then you're like, I know a person and
this is
can
true.
refer you to that person who loves mainframes, because that's not my jam.
This is absolutely true. But I think that the problem is that as a consultant, like they want to basically keep the money within like, the house, if that makes sense. Whereas like if it was just like, me just as a like, I forget what it's called, like a solo ranger or something like that. Like I would definitely be like, hey, I know some people. I would definitely reach out to like Misty Decker, and be like, hey, I need a mainframe person, because they are.
Oh, see, my work subcontracts all the time. We're like, hey, you're good at this thing. Are you allowed to subcontract? Can we subcontract?
Oh yeah, see, I never get down to that, I guess, to that level, because like we within BlackGirlsHack, we actually a couple of years ago had a workshop that somebody came and did for us. It was like a week long, and it was called Evil Mainframe, and it was basically like
That's
a
a
week
fun
long.
one.
Yeah, based on like IBM. And it was absolutely amazing. And I took that training and I was sitting here like, oh my gosh, this is so dope. But, because most of the companies that, out here have some sort of mainframe still in existence, right? So, and the people who are able to hack those mainframes, like, are very, like, mobile penetration testers are like, very small subset, but like even smaller than that are like little unicorns. They're like, hey, like I am legit a unicorn because I do mainframe hacking. And that community is so small that it's just like, how much money do you want? Like, do you want gold plated tissue or, so like, but again, like, that's why I said, like, people would not be able to deal with me when I get to like God tier and I know all of the things, or I feel like I at least have a breadth of like most of the things, because then it's going to be like, why do you mortals speak to me? No,
So
I would actually teach all of the people all of the things.
You're like, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm just going to teach everyone everything.
Right? That would be so amazing. But yeah, that's.
So it sounds like lots of meetings, a little bit of hacking, and then lots of documenting.
Yeah. I think it's where I'm at, because like I said, I'm still very much so a baby hacker. I do much more hacking than I do meetings. But I can tell you, having been in, management, and, when you get into the upper levels of management, it's like you do more meetings than you do like actually hands-on things, right? Which is why at some point you have to have the conversation with yourself about, like, hey, do I want to be more technical and hands-on, or do I want to get into the management of the things? Because, like, for the most part, managers are not out here like hands-on keyboards. They're having conversations, they're selling things. And for me, I still want to hack all of the things, right? So that's why when you look at my resume, like, hey, I did project management for a while. I've done consulting for, probably 15, 20 years at this point. But it's like, I'm very much hands-on keyboard these days because I'm trying to get more technical, and I'm trying to, basically get to the God tier. Not even like God tier, like maybe like somewhere in the middle, like not sadly out of the baby hacking realm, I'd say.
There you go. All right, so that's what the job's really like. And you had mentioned that you were, started this off on your own. So if the people watching this want to do this as a career, where do they start? Like, how do they know this is for them?
So I actually started off doing capture the flags. So capture the flags are basically gamified. Think of it, most of them are like Jeopardy style competitions, where it's like, hey, you have something that's encrypted, can you decrypt it? Or you have, something that has like steganography, which is like there's a secret message hidden in the picture. For example, find the hidden message, right? And you go through different categories, and you have to basically use knowledge in different areas to answer questions. And I started, basically doing capture the flags, and, seeing different areas, like, hey, what do you find interesting? Like when I did, we have a partnership with National Cyber League. And when the first time I did National Cyber League, that was actually my first real capture the flag competition. Like I did really well in like the password cracking, and I did really well in like the stenography, and like there's certain sections, but then there were certain sections that were like, log-based analysis, like which are more blue team type of deals. And at the time, like I had no idea. Like I literally, and I can say this now because I'm not as embarrassed about it. But like I would literally open up the logs that they provided in Excel, and then start searching in Excel, or trying to like sort things, or doing like pivot tables to try to get information from there, as opposed to, maybe like a log analysis tool where, I'm not sure how you're supposed to actually do it, but I
Wait,
guarantee you.
that's what I do. What am I supposed to be doing?
But look, that's what I did. And like, I did not, I don't teach blue team things because like, I'm not sure how you're actually supposed to do it. But like, that's, I approached it from a problem solving. I'm like, I have a whole bunch of data. The data is like basically set up in a tabular manner. I'm going to pull it up in Excel and try to, work from
Obviously,
there.
yeah.
And they're like, well, what's the most frequent like IP address, or what's the most, and I'll basically just approach that like, hey, here's data. I'm going to try to solve that. But like, when I saw other people, like they started actually pulling it up in like actual tools and like, using it like, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I thought I was out here killing it because I'm like, hey, me and my Excel and my,
I have like
search
searched this
features.
out. We've done a, V count and
Exactly. Like I was like, I'm out here killing the game, but it I don't think that that's the way that it's done. But again, like that's why I preface my bio by saying like, I am a red teamer. I do all of the red team things. And, I think that, in my world domination plan, I'm probably going to have to get stronger in the blue team things because my end goal is to be a CISO, which I know it's not going to be any hacking whatsoever. It'll just be, basically meetings on meetings and then meetings about meetings. But, to get there, I need to have a strong foundation, which includes blue team things. But for now, like I'm just hacking all of the things. And but yeah, that's how I would suggest that people get started, is capture the flags. Once you figure out, like, hey, I want to be a red teamer, or hey, I want to be a blue teamer. There are a lot of different programs that you can do to try to practice that along those lines. So I mentioned Try Hack Me. I mentioned Hack the Box. We have a partnership with Rangeforce. There are a lot of different cloud-based training providers that have, hands-on platforms that allow you to actually practice skills. There is like a website, and I can't think of the name of it. I feel like it might be VulnHub, but I'm not sure. That basically you just put up vulnerable VMs on there, and you can, if you want to, download the VMs and be able to hack in them. A lot of this stuff is set up for you in, Hack the Box. If you are like a brand new like baby actual like toddler hacker, I would suggest that you start off with Try Hack Me, because Try Hack Me is like, hey, we set up all the dominoes for you directly in a row, so that when you push the dominoes, it makes a pretty little pattern and you feel accomplished in your life, right? And that's what Try Hack Me it is. It's set up, it's very beginner friendly. It has like step-by-step. These are the questions. There are walkthroughs available for it everywhere. This is how you do it, right? Hack the Box, they take the training wheels off. Like imagine the dominoes, and the dominoes are spread out all over the room, and they're not even standing up at this point. Like it's like the dominoes are just in the room, and that's all I can tell you. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not going to be pretty. There's, you can probably search and find a step-by-step, but it's going to be like, hey, I broke in, what I do. Like, again, like I'm sitting here trying to prepare for like the OSCP. And like, I cannot tell you how many times a day that I literally will say out loud to myself, like, okay, I'm in, now what? Because it's like, I'm looking for a, again, a root flag and a user level flag, and those are usually in the same place, right? But it's like, you never know what the system, hierarchy is when you get in there. In general, like what it looks like, but it's like, what do I need to do? Where am I? What level privileges does this person have? There's a whole lot of, I think
am
other
I
things
over in the DMZ on the guest account?
Right.
Yeah.
Or look, am I in, like, there are literally like boxes that are set up that are literally like, hey, this is meant to, especially like when you do external network penetration testing, there's like boxes, honeypots that are set up literally to make you waste time. I have a friend that is a blue teamer, and he basically just sets up like honeypots, just to waste people's time, where it's just like, hey, you're sending a message to this machine to try to figure out what it's for, and it just repeats the messages back to you. And I can just imagine, like, just trying to break into this network and getting to this box, and it's just like, what in the world is, like, what am I doing wrong? And but again, like, I'm not a blue teamer, but when it comes down to it, like just making sure that you are trying the different, websites and working your way up. I'm starting on Windows boxes on my in Hack the Box right now because like I am weaker in Windows, despite the fact that I use a Windows machine every day. When I hack, for the most part, I hack in Linux. So like I feel like I could probably, like, if Linux was a second language, I would be like, hey, I am like fluent in Linux, but like in Windows, like I am
you
not
can
as
order
great.
lunch, but that's about it.
Basically, like it's questionable. I can find out where the bathroom is and maybe the hospital. Just that's about it. But in Mac it's even worse. So for me, I'm trying to make sure that I am more fluent in the Windows side of the house, because again, even though it's not as big in the corporate world, like for the OSCP, you have to know both Windows and Linux. I don't even want to think about whether or not there's Mac boxes in the OSCP, because that would just blow my mind, and I'm not ready to be there yet. So, but I'm starting with Windows boxes.
Now, you mentioned you were studying for your OSCP. Were there other certifications you considered, or you basically were like, that's the gold standard, I'm going to go for that?
No. So I got the web application penetration testing because when I started pen testing, that was what I was doing at the time. And I was went through the Virginia Cyber Skills Academy, I think through Women's Cyber Jitsu. And then I got a SAN certification. So my first penetration testing related certification was the GWAPT by SANS. And then I'm currently working on the GPen. That test is, I think, towards the end of this month. And that's the penetration testing. So that's part of the network, external and internal network penetration testing certification. So once those two are done, my plan is to do the OSCP, so that's like kind of like my evolution. But I'm also, applied to take the cloud-based penetration testing, because again, like I feel like you never know what it is that you're going to see, and the more areas that I'm comfortable in, the more projects that they can task me on, the more opportunity I have. And I should mention, as a consultant, you have the ability to have a moral compass as a penetration tester, and what that means is that if for example, someone is asking you to do a test and you don't like that company, or you don't like that country, or if you don't like, whatever it is that they're, you don't believe in what it is they're doing, then you have the ability to say no. As opposed to like if you go and work for StreamYard or MySpace, right? If you don't like what they're doing, then you might need to find a new job.
Into them by, yeah.
Yeah, so you get to say, I'll be able to look at my calendar and be like, hey, I've got, this really crappy, company that I don't want to work for or do anything with. I can say like, hey, I don't want to do that work. They, for the most part, will ask me like, hey, are you okay with this? Especially if it's something that's like, oh, well, this is for a country that's, we're not necessarily friends with, or they're doing, things that are not nice to certain groups of people, or, whatever the case may be. So if you have, issues with the work that you're doing, you don't have to do it. At least, for the company that I work for. So, you have the ability as a consultant to do the work that interests you, so, as long as I stay proficient in whatever it is I'm trying to do, I can be like, hey, I want to do something mainframe next week, or, hey, I want to do something mobile next week. Because you can, as a hacker, basically, as long as you have the skill set to be able to do the job, you have the ability to kind of pick and choose who you want to work for.
Now, I know SANS has programs specifically for women and vets that can get you either discounted or in some cases, I think they give out some courses for free. Would you say like, and I also know, at least within the US, and I think Canada, I live in Canada for context, but I'm a US citizen. If it's related to your job, you can write it off on your taxes. If your company is not paying for you to get these certifications, would you say that this is something you think as someone entering in should like try and save for and invest in? Or do you think maybe like not necessarily?
Okay, so I want to preface this by saying that I have SANS certifications. I absolutely love SANS. I do not like SANS price tag. I got a scholarship through Women in Security and Privacy for my SANS certification. And when I was going to checkout, I saw the price tag, and I think it ended up being like $12,000 or $13,000. I am not recommending that anybody try to save up money to be able to pay for those.
Get your company to do it, or get
If
the
your
discount.
company does not do it, there's a program, it's called a work study that SANS does, that basically, like, anytime they have a class, and it's available throughout the world, like they've got them over in other countries as well. And the work study basically makes it $2,500. You basically serve as like a TA, or, you know, a moderator for the class during, you know, when it's taught. And then, but you still get the same books, you still get the same materials. But the approach that I would tell people to do is to get involved in some of the programs. There's one in Virginia, the Virginia Cyber Skills Academy, which is Women's Cyber Jitsu has a partnership with them. There's one for diversity. There's one for women specifically. There's state-based ones. There's one in Maryland. There's one in California. There's a lot of different programs that SANS has with different places that make it free. And, you know, that'll at least get you, you know, depending on which version of the program, it'll get you between 1 and 3 certifications. And I would suggest doing that as opposed to going and paying for them. If you are interested in, you know, hey, I need to prove my skills, there are a lot of more cost-effective ways. And this is someone who, like, you know, I know and love a lot of SANS people, but like, that's a lot of money, you know, like even
So
for some of the
find a less
ones.
expensive thing to prove yourself first, get a job, and then
Yes,
get
so
the
like,
job to pay for it.
right. So like the OSCP, you know, is $1,000 or less, I think. There's a new one that is basically you do a penetration test and then you write a report. It's the PNPT, which is I think it's the cyber mentor, Heath Adams, I think is the company that does the PNPT, but that one is like, I think like $400 and includes a retest. EC Council has a certified ethical hacker if you're in the government space, that is very big. And I think that one's maybe about $1,000 or $1,200. We have a partnership with them so that we can get it cheaper. But like if you just go to their website, it's like maybe $1,000. But again, there's a big difference between saving up for $1,000 than saving up for, you know, basically a car certification.
Yeah. A really nice car.
Right. So, you know, like, and like I said, like, and I am a fan of the SANS certifications. I would like to see people, you know, want them in jobs more. You can definitely do them in the penetration testing space. You know, but there are other certification bodies out here that are doing the same sort of thing. CompTIA has a Pen Test Plus. It's more like multiple choice vibes as opposed to hands-on. But like there are, like I said, there are a lot of different certification bodies out here that you can actually show. EJPT is one. It's by eLearn Security. I think that's INE, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and they've got a professional penetration tester certification as well, which is like the higher level one. And the EJPT is $200. There's 40 hours worth of training. So like for somebody who's like, hey, I need something to show and I need something, you know, that's going to be relatively quick. I tell people like, hey, go get into that 40-hour EJPT course. You know, it's the junior penetration testing course. You know, go do that 40 hours and take the test. You know, you can take the test over the course of a weekend, I think it is. I want to say you've got 24 hours to take that test, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, again, that'll separate you from somebody who's just like, hey, you know, I went to a boot camp, or hey, you know, I've been self-training and try hack me and hack the box. And, you know, I think I've got some skills. That'll, you know, at least give a little bit more credibility to separate you from, you know, the other 100 people who are probably applying to that job.
And right now there's a lot of people applying for all the jobs.
Oh my gosh, like there's been so many like layoffs recently that's been absolutely ridiculous. And like I know that there are literally like, I think they said it's something like 700,000 jobs that are open for cybersecurity professionals in the United States. I think that's something more like 4 million across the world. But like I feel like it probably just got a completely ridiculous influx of people who are like, because like a lot of the jobs.
And we all know that like the way that the application systems work and the way that people write their resumes don't match, which plug for, I think next week, our Career Village is doing a how to better write your resume thing.
Yay! So. Yeah, that's definitely necessary because it is so frustrating, even as a baby hacker, when I go to try to, apply for jobs and it's just like, I'm not hearing anything back. I'm like, yeah, I'm a baby hacker, but I've got, like 15, 20 years of like consulting experience. That should give me something. But then, when you look on LinkedIn, it'll be like, 200 people applied for the same job. And it's like, eek, like, that I think is probably a nightmare for them, and they have to find a way to basically weed through all of those applicants. So you kind of need a way
lot
to
of it is
find out.
automated systems, and they do not make the best choices.
They do not make the best choices. And like I always tell people, like, I'm still a Black woman named Tennisha in America, where you have ATS systems that have a lot of unconscious bias in there. So like, it's like you kind of need to stand out as much as possible. So, when you have people out here like, hey, I need to get my resume done, make sure that your resume matches up with your LinkedIn also, because, I've had people who have said, hey, your LinkedIn doesn't say who you work for. And I'm like, well, I run a Black nonprofit organization, and you would not imagine like how many, horrible people who are out here who are, want to attack and try to like, hurt me because they don't believe that there should be organizations that, promote women interests. We had a Girls Hack Village this year at DEF CON, and there were people who were underneath the comments on YouTube on the DEF CON channel, like, this is woke BS. Like, why do you have a women's village? So I know that you have your village in Vegas at the same time. It's just like, I'm sure you guys probably get a lot of the same type of hates. Like, why is there a woman for hacking? You should just be a hacker. You don't need a hacker.
We liberally utilize mute. Mute is our friend.
Absolutely. But, that's why, because, when people get mad, like, they have no problem calling up HR for the company that you work for and being like, hey, we don't like what Tanisha's talking about. No, you're going to have to work a little bit harder. And if they want to call up, the head of BlackGirlsHack and complain about me, please. Like, absolutely, let me take notes, because, but I think in today's day and age, like that's an issue. But you want to make sure that your LinkedIn, reflects what it is that you're trying to do, because again, people use LinkedIn. One of my siblings just got a job making, ridiculous money, and they didn't even get his resume during the entire interview process. They just looked off at his LinkedIn, and it's just
my
like,
current job, they hunted me down through LinkedIn. I don't think they ever got a resume.
Yeah, I mean, which is crazy, because some people are like, oh, I don't use my LinkedIn, or it's not updated, or it just basically says my name, and I'm like, well, that's a branding opportunity fail, because you have the the ability to have a website that just basically says like, hey, this is me, and it just talks about you. That's why I've always kept my Tennisha.com resume up, or my Tennisha.com website up, because again, like, this is free publicity. You get to say what people are saying about you, as opposed to, other people dominating the search results for, when they're looking for you. So, I think as much as possible, people, go to the Diana Initiative resume workshop next week, update your LinkedIn before you apply, because people are going to be looking at this, and I literally have LinkedIn Premium. So like, when I go and look at people, it doesn't even tell them I'm looking at them. It's just like,
or
stalker mode.
Have two LinkedIn profiles, one that you use for stalking people and one that you use to actually like get jobs.
True. This is true.
You want to be cheap, just saying.
Absolutely. And because of that, like, when I tell people who are setting up like their hacker like resume, like, have some very well-aged sock puppets, like, and that includes like, LinkedIn, making sure that I've got several very distinguished looking white men sock profiles that I use to do things when I need to do some search or recon.
If people have not heard of This Person Is Not Real, it's a very good resource for.
And that's who I used for my profile pictures. Like, I basically took a picture and I'm like, let's see, this looks very professional. So like, this person is not real.
Not borrow other people's images, and
you cannot. But there's also other ways. I someone actually just showed me to this other platform recently where you basically, it develops AI images of people like based on prompts, which is pretty cool. But there are a lot of different ways to get profile pictures so that you can set up your profile so that people don't know that you are looking at them.
Yeah.
And that's not, I'm not trying to promote people who are being creeps. I'm saying like, reconnaissance is a legitimate part of the penetration testing profession. You have to do research.
And if people have not heard of Google dorking, go look at all the YouTube videos on it. You would be surprised what just a simple Google search can net you on information about something you're trying to find within a company.
Absolutely. When you put things online, like it never goes away. Like it's stored forever. When I tell people like, oh, did you check the Wayback Machine? And they'll be like, what? And I'll be like, check the Wayback Machine. It's like archive.org. It's anytime a website has been crawled, and it may take hours or days, I don't know, for it to be crawled, that information is stored somewhere, so even
you can plug in on your web browser as well to request certain pages get archived into the archive. So if that's a resource that you use, don't forget that you can
absolutely
help keep it up to date.
Absolutely. This is so true. There's so many different tools. But then I would say join all of the communities also. There are so many different organizations. I represent BlackGirlsHack and Nicole represents Diana Initiative, but there's so many other organizations that are also doing work in this space. And I would say join all of those organizations because, it's like, depending on where you are, they may be plugged into different, areas or resources such as, different types of training or discounts on vouchers or opportunities, to be able to, help do something like run the Diane Initiative and, during Hacker Summer Camp.
And it doesn't even have to be official groups. Like there's kind of semi-unofficial groups. I know out in Nova, there's like the Nova Hackers Meetup. And so that's not like a formal group that does formal things, but they meet up all the time. So you can find informal groups, formal groups. You can find interest-based groups. So I know there's like some groups on Discord that get together just to talk about doing CTFs, some that get together to talk about like, hey, let's study for our OSCP together. So make friends. And
absolutely,
I will say I am terrified of making friends and I'm bad at it. The trick to making friends is to volunteer for something and you'll be forced to make friends.
Absolutely. I have had people like one of my favorite people from BlackGirlsHack, her name is Latrunda. When she started off, she did not like people. She was not social at all. And like now when I put out calls for like, hey, do you want to go run our booth at this conference or, this thing, she'll be like, oh, I'll go, and she'll be like a social butterfly. She'll be talking to everybody. But again, when we first met, she was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And, myself, I don't like, humans for the most part. I don't like people. Like I'm a-okay with staying in my house forever and always. But, I have found that, finding like-minded people, especially to be able to talk about things, my day one friend group are not hackers. They are not, technical people. So I can't talk to them about, hey, I'm trying to break in and, hey, I'm trying to do this, or this is what I'm, I can't have a technical conversation with them. But, my hacker friends, I can be like, I can call them up and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I have a friend, I call her Root. She's one of my favorite hackers. I will literally be like, hey, I'm trying to break in and I can't get in. Like, can you? And she will basically be like, well, did you try this? Did you try this? And, I can have those conversations. And I absolutely, love that for me, that I have those friends that I can be like, hey, I've been hitting my head up against the wall for the past, X number of time about this problem. Can you help me think of a way to approach it? Which is why it's important for us to have, more women in the spaces or have, more diversity in spaces, especially for cybersecurity, because they have different approaches to problem solving. So, that's why I'm very big on, hey, we need more women. We need more people of color who are going to be in penetration testing, because for the most part, you don't see, we're unicorns out here, but even women representing 51% of the world, we're only, I think it's something like maybe 20% of the cybersecurity realm. And when you look at penetration testing specifically, or hackers specifically, it's, they probably don't even have concrete numbers of what that looks like, but it's in the single digits, if it's not like almost zero, but we are a very small subset, but we want to, as much as possible, try to change that. so that we can have, more, comfort in this space, but then also, greater opportunities for the organizations because there's so many different ways of approaching things.
Awesome. Well, I think we're almost out of time.
Yay!
So I have some resources. Like we had mentioned earlier, there's Hack the Box. There's a link tree for Black Girls Hack, which has a ton of resources on it. There's a GitHub. Just take a screenshot of this. I'm not going to pronounce it. That Awesome Pen Test has a ton. It's a ton of resources, and they'll take pull requests if you have more to submit to it. And Tennisha, you said that you have a course now available?
Yes. I just dropped last month my how to get started on career and pen testing course on LinkedIn Learning. So if you go to my page on LinkedIn, you can get it for free. So you don't have to be a member of LinkedIn Learning to do it. But I would recommend that you check out LinkedIn Learning because there's a lot of different courses there on a lot of different topics. And I will tell you that they care very much so if you like the courses or not, because I want to generate more courses for them. So check out the course. It is linked on my page. Feel free to connect with me if you are on LinkedIn, and you should be on LinkedIn because at some point you're going to need a job.
Doesn't hurt to have it out there. You don't have to check it every day.
This is true. You can check it once a month if you need to, or when you need it, but you should at least have it.
And then this is a reminder, if you are in the US and you can vote and you have not already, please vote.
Today's the day. You've got a couple more hours. I think it's on the East Coast. We've got till maybe 7 or 8 today, depending on where you live. So please go out and vote. They're like, oh, it's not a presidential election. It doesn't matter. Please go out and vote. You don't have the right to complain if you are not doing, your part, which is voting.
And I voted. I am in Canada. I did my whole FVAP or whatever they call it, last month. Mine's in. Do your thing.
I voted also, so I was literally in and out in maybe 5 minutes. So it's not super long lines today. So please take time, out of your day, go vote because it matters.
Then Giving Tuesday. Everybody knows there's Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving involves Cyber Monday, which is not that kind of cyber, and Black Friday. Please don't actually think there's good deals, because usually the deals are rubbish. But as part of that shenanigans, there's Giving Tuesday, which is a worldwide phenomena. It's not just the US. And it's people trying to show support for organizations on November 29th. And that does not have to be financial. You can go show up to clean up trash in a local park. You can go cuddle animals at your local animal shelter because they need to be socialized. Whatever matters to you, show support in some way, shape, or form. That could be monetary. It could be your time. It could be you taking some stuff, some posts or some information, and sharing it with your network so that people know about that. And then, of course, conveniently, we both have donate pages on our website if you do want to throw money at us.
Yes, we take money, but we will also take your time. Like Nicole said, she is a volunteer. I am also a volunteer. Our organizations are only able to run based on our volunteers. So, please, if you do not have money, give us some of your time. You can teach something. You could help do workshops. There's so many different ways, but, give back in some way. That is the spirit of what, at least what Thanksgiving is supposed to be. So, please, November 29th, give back if you have any money left after all of your shopping and all of the other things.
And then for those who want more people to get into the industry and to enjoy Hacker Summer Camp, in the past, we have done separate fundraising efforts to try and get more people to show up to camp. We are combining efforts this year, so we're going to be collecting money and redirecting as many donations as we can over to Black Girls Hack in effort to increase the number of people going to Hacker Summer Camp this year. I could not afford it previously, or maybe are just trying to get into the industry. If you remember being a student and living on ramen noodles, that Vegas is kind of out of budget for that. So that is also a good thing to donate to. And I believe you said there was
news too.
Similar thing related for slightly younger people this year as well.
Yeah, so we it hasn't gotten approved yet, but we are we sent a message to the DEF CON folks to tell them we wanted to do a kids camp in addition to our Girls Hack Village, which is a DEF CON. So we'll fingers crossed, we'll see if they jump for that idea. But we were able to bring 23 people through scholarships to Hacker Summer Camp last year. Our goal is to try to at least meet that, if not exceed it. And my hope is that by partnering with Diana Initiative, who has their conference during that Hacker Summer Camp week, that we can get more people that are there that can be able to support it, so we can start to see more diversity in more women, more people in our scholarships are open to everybody. So you just have to, apply for them. And, if you win, then you get money towards your tickets for the Hacker Summer Camp and for your travel and your hotel. That's how we're setting up the scholarships this year. So
if anybody happens to work for an airline and wants to donate large amounts of points to be able to fly people in, if anyone works for a hotel that has a hotel on the Strip and wants to donate nights, like, you can get creative. It doesn't have to be cash. Work with your company if at the end of the year they have some extra money in the budget. Like, anything that's going to help house, transport, or feed people at Hacker Summer Camp, we're open.
Yes, we need like maybe Lyft and Uber if you guys want to donate, like, to help get people back and forth during summer camp. There are so many opportunities. Also, we're both 501c3 organizations, which means your donations are tax deductible, and we are signed up with Benevity, which in a lot of cases will match your donation that you make through them. So there are a lot of different opportunities. So consider that Giving Tuesday, but then also throughout the rest of the year as well, because this is an amazing cause.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and teaching people about what it is to be a pen tester. And this will be available. I will, after the live finishes, we'll make sure it's available on our regular channel, and I'll download a copy in case y'all want to upload it to yours. And it does look like we have a couple comments, but no more questions. So thank you, everyone.
Yay, bye.